The gunshot echoed across the dusty plains as Eliza Taylor watched her family's wagon go up in flames, the truth she'd spoken still burning on her lips like the fire before her. "You ain't welcome in Silverwood no more," the town leader had declared, his judgment final despite the injustice of it all. At 22, she now stood alone on the outskirts of town with nothing but the clothes on her back, a small satchel of belongings, and the unwavering belief that honesty shouldn't cost a person everything. Arizona Territory, 1878. The unforgiving sun beat down on Eliza's fair skin as she trudged along the worn trail leading away from the only home she'd ever known. Her crime: exposing the corrupt dealings between the town's most respected men and the railroad company that had swindled half the townsfolk out of their lands. Speaking truth against power had earned her this exile, while the guilty men remained comfortably in their positions of authority. "Seems a mite foolish to be walking these parts alone," a deep voice called from behind her. Eliza whirled around, her hand instinctively reaching for the small knife tucked in her boot, the only protection she had. A man sat atop a chestnut stallion, his face partially shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. Dust clung to his worn leather vest and denim pants, marking him as a working man rather than one of leisure. "I don't recall asking for your opinion on my foolishness," she replied, straightening her shoulders despite her exhaustion. The man chuckled, pushing his hat back to reveal a face weathered by sun and wind, though he couldn't have been more than 30. His eyes, bright green against his tanned skin, studied her with unexpected kindness. "Name's Gabriel Keller. Most folks call me Gabe." He gestured toward the empty land stretching before them. "Next town's 15 miles out. Sun'll be down in a couple hours. I'm aware of the geography, Mr. Keller, and yet you're still headed that way on foot." He raised an eyebrow. "Must be something mighty powerful pushing you from Silverwood." Eliza's throat tightened. The truth has a way of making itself unwelcome in places built on lies. Something flickered in Gabriel's expression, recognition, perhaps, or understanding. "Your truth is that powerful, is it?" "Powerful enough to get me banished with nothing but threats at my back." Gabriel studied her for a long moment before extending his hand. "Then it sounds like a truth worth hearing. My ranch is 3 miles east, could offer you a meal and shelter for the night before you continue your journey." Eliza hesitated. Her parents had raised her to be cautious around strangers, especially men offering help with no apparent motivation, yet something in his steady gaze suggested trustworthiness. "Why would you help me?" she asked. "Because in these parts, honesty's rarer than gold and twice as valuable." His lips quirked into a half-smile. "Your truth is my treasure, Miss Taylor, Eliza Taylor." She studied him carefully before accepting his outstretched hand. "I suppose I could use a meal before continuing on." Gabriel pulled her up behind him with surprising strength. "Hold tight, Miss Taylor. Rusty here doesn't much care for double riders unless they're properly secured." Reluctantly, Eliza wrapped her arms around his waist, immediately aware of the solid warmth of him. They rode in silence for several minutes before Gabriel spoke again. "So, what truth got you cast out? Must have been something powerful, significant." The memory of that fateful town meeting burned fresh in her mind. Standing before the gathered townsfolk, documents in hand that proved Judge Wilson and Mayor Brooks had secretly sold information to the railroad company about which lands contained water rights. The railroad had then purchased those specific parcels from unsuspecting farmers at criminally low prices. "I exposed corruption," she said finally. "The town leaders have been working with the railroad to steal land from honest farmers." Gabriel's back stiffened slightly beneath her hands. "The Eastern Quarter properties, the ones that suddenly became railroad property last month, you know about it." "My family lost 40 acres to that scheme," he said, his voice tight. "My father died still believing he'd made a bad business decision, never knew he'd been swindled." Eliza felt a surge of vindication. I found ledgers in the mayor's office when I was cleaning. The evidence was clear as day. And instead of thanking you, they ran you out of town. The mayor is Judge Wilson's brother-in-law. The sheriff is their cousin, she sighed. I didn't stand a chance. Gabriel was quiet for so long that Eliza wondered if she'd said too much. Then he spoke, his voice low and determined. Sometimes the truth needs more than one voice behind it to be heard. They crested a small hill, and Gabriel's ranch came into view. It wasn't grand by any means, a modest cabin with a barn and corral, a small garden plot, and a few outbuildings, but it spoke of care and honest work. It's not much, he said, almost apologetically, but it's mine, free and clear. It's beautiful, Eliza replied honestly. After the chaos of the morning, the peaceful homestead seemed like a paradise. As they approached, a tall man with graying hair emerged from the barn. Gabe, didn't expect you back so soon. Who's your friend? Samuel, this is Miss Eliza Taylor. She's had some trouble in Silverwood. Miss Taylor, this is Samuel Johnson, my ranch hand and the closest thing to family I've got out here. Samuel's weathered face broke into a warm smile. Any friend of Gabe's is welcome here. You look like you could use some rest, Miss Taylor. Gabriel helped her dismount, his hands lingering briefly at her waist before he pulled away. Samuel makes the best stew this side of the Mississippi. How about I show you where you can freshen up while he gets dinner ready? The cabin was simple but comfortable, 2 bedrooms, a main living area with a stone fireplace and a small kitchen. Everything was surprisingly neat for a bachelor's quarters. You can use my room, Gabriel said, opening a door to reveal a clean space with a bed covered in a handmade quilt. I'll bunk with Samuel in the other room. I couldn't possibly, I insist. There's a wash basin and fresh water. Take your time, dinner won't be ready for a while yet. Alone in his room, Eliza finally allowed herself to feel the full weight of the day's events. Exhaustion washed over her as she sank onto the edge of the bed. The tears she'd been holding back since morning finally spilled over, silent sobs shaking her shoulders as she buried her face in her hands. She hadn't noticed Gabriel returning until his gentle voice broke the silence. It's a hard thing, standing up for what's right and losing everything for it. Eliza hastily wiped her tears, embarrassed to be caught in such a vulnerable state. I'm sorry. I don't usually, no need for apologies here. He set a small bundle on the bed beside her. Found some of my mother's old things, thought you might want something clean to change into. The simple kindness undid her composure once again. Why are you helping me? You don't even know me. Gabriel knelt before her, his green eyes serious. Because 12 years ago, I spoke up about seeing the banker's son stealing from the general store. Nobody believed the 14-year-old son of a dirt farmer over the banker's boy. My father lost our loan, and we nearly lost everything. He smiled sadly. I know what it costs to tell the truth when lies would be easier. In that moment, looking into his understanding eyes, Eliza felt a connection she'd never experienced before, the recognition of a kindred spirit. Thank you, she whispered. Rest now, we'll talk more over dinner. Dinner was indeed as delicious as promised. Samuel's stew was hearty and flavorful, accompanied by fresh baked bread that reminded Eliza of her mother's cooking. As they ate, Gabriel asked about her life in Silverwood, and she found herself sharing stories of growing up as the daughter of the town's seamstress. My father died when I was 16, she explained. Mother and I made ends meet with her sewing and my work cleaning for the wealthier families in town. Including the mayor's house, Gabriel noted. Yes, I never meant to find those ledgers. I was dusting his study when I knocked over a stack of papers. She stared into her bowl. Once I saw what they contained, I couldn't pretend I hadn't. Samuel shook his head. Seems to me you did the honorable thing, Miss Taylor. Honor doesn't count for much when you're facing down the wrong end of a shotgun, she replied bitterly. Gabriel's hand clenched around his spoon. They threatened you with violence. Sheriff Collins suggested that accidents happen to people who spread dangerous lies about important men. The memory still made her shake. When I presented the evidence at the town meeting anyway, Judge Wilson declared me a troublemaker and had me escorted out of town. And your mother? Samuel asked gently, Eliza's eyes filled with tears. She passed last winter, influenza. Gabriel reached across the table and briefly covered her hand with his. The touch was warm, comforting. I'm sorry, Eliza. The use of her given name should have startled her, but somehow it felt right. Thank you for your kindness, both of you. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come along, Gabriel. Later, as darkness settled over the ranch, Eliza sat on the small porch, watching stars emerge in the vast sky. Gabriel joined her, offering a cup of coffee. Have you decided where you'll go? He asked, settling into the chair beside her. Tucson, perhaps. I've heard there are opportunities for women there. Gabriel nodded. It's growing fast. You could likely find work with your sewing skills. That's my hope. She sipped the strong coffee. I should be on my way tomorrow. I've imposed enough. You're welcome to stay longer. Get your bearings before moving on. The offer was tempting, more tempting than it should have been. There was something about Gabriel Keller that made her feel safe, understood. But staying meant risking her heart, and she'd already lost too much. That's kind, but I should continue my journey. Gabriel studied her for a long moment. What if there was a way to right the wrong done to you, to all those people who lost their land? Eliza turned to face him fully. What do you mean? Those documents you found, did you bring them with you? Copies of them? She reached for her satchel and pulled out several folded papers. I knew they might try to destroy the evidence. Gabriel's eyes lit with admiration. Clever woman. Not clever enough to avoid exile, she said wryly. Perhaps exile was exactly what was needed. He leaned forward, excitement in his voice. The territorial judge will be in Silver Creek next week for circuit court. Judge Harris is known for his fairness and contempt for corruption. Hope flickered within Eliza for the first time since that morning. You think he might listen? I know he will, and with these documents. Gabriel tapped the papers. This could change everything, not just for you but for everyone who was cheated. They'll deny everything. It will be my word against theirs. Not just your word, mine too. Gabriel's expression was determined. And I suspect others will speak up once someone breaks the silence. Eliza felt a strange fluttering in her chest, part hope, part fear, and something else she wasn't ready to name. Why would you risk yourself for this? For me, Gabriel's gaze softened. Because some truths are worth fighting for, Eliza Taylor, and some people are worth standing beside. The morning brought clearer skies and clearer thoughts. Over breakfast, Gabriel and Eliza formulated a plan. They would ride to Silver Creek together, arriving before the territorial judge to gather additional evidence and find others willing to testify. Samuel will watch the ranch, Gabriel explained as they prepared to depart. We'll need a week, maybe more. Are you certain about this? Eliza asked, still amazed by his willingness to help. You hardly know me. Gabriel smiled as he adjusted Rusty's saddle. I know enough. I know you're brave enough to stand up for what's right, even at great personal cost. I know you're clever enough to preserve evidence when others might have forgotten, and I know you've got the prettiest smile I've seen in all of Arizona territory. The unexpected compliment brought heat to Eliza's cheeks. You're being ridiculous. Honest, he corrected. Just being honest. The journey to Silver Creek took most of the day. As they rode, Gabriel told stories of his childhood, of learning to ranch from his father, of dreams to expand his modest holdings someday. Eliza found herself sharing her own hopes of perhaps opening a dress shop, of creating beautiful things that brought joy to others. You could do that here, you know, Gabriel said casually. There's no proper seamstress between Silverwood and Silver Creek. Folks would come from miles around. The suggestion hung in the air between them, filled with possibilities neither was ready to voice. Silver Creek proved to be larger than Silverwood, with a proper hotel where Gabriel insisted on getting Eliza her own room. A lady should have privacy, he said firmly, brooking no argument about the expense. Over the next 3 days they worked tirelessly. Gabriel knew several ranchers who had lost land in the railroad scheme, and one by one, they collected affidavits and additional evidence. Most were initially reluctant to speak out, fearing reprisals, but Eliza's courage inspired them. "If this slip of a woman can stand against them, so can I," declared one grizzled rancher after hearing her story. By the time Judge Harris arrived, they had built a substantial case. The judge, a stern man with penetrating eyes and a reputation for fairness, agreed to hear them privately before the official court sessions began. "This is a serious accusation against prominent men," he said after reviewing their evidence. "But the documentation appears thorough. I will issue summons for them to appear tomorrow." That evening, Eliza paced her hotel room, anxiety making rest impossible. A soft knock interrupted her worrying. "Gabriel," she said with relief, opening the door to find him standing there, equally unable to sleep. "Walk with me," he asked. "The night air might help calm our thoughts." The small town was quiet under the moonlight as they strolled toward the edge of town. Gabriel's hand occasionally brushed against hers, sending inexplicable warmth through her each time. "Are you afraid?" he asked softly. "Terrified," she admitted. "But not of them anymore. I'm afraid of what comes after. I've lost my home, my place in the world." Gabriel stopped walking, turning to face her fully. "You haven't lost your place, Eliza. You've just not found where you truly belong yet." The moonlight silvered his features, highlighting the sincerity in his eyes. "Perhaps," he began, then hesitated. "Perhaps what?" "Perhaps your place is somewhere you haven't considered, with someone who sees your honest heart as the treasure it is." Eliza's breath caught in her throat. "Gabriel, I know it's sudden," he continued, his voice low and earnest. "We've known each other barely a week, but I feel like I've been waiting for you without knowing it was you I was waiting for." He took her hand gently in his. "I'm not asking for promises, just consider staying. Not just in the territory, but with me, at least long enough to see if what I'm feeling might grow between us." Eliza looked down at their joined hands, his large and work roughened, hers smaller but equally marked by labor, two honest pairs of hands finding each other against all odds. "I've lost everything once," she whispered. "I don't know if I'm brave enough to risk my heart too." Gabriel lifted her chin with his finger. "The woman who stood up to the most powerful men in her town isn't brave enough. I don't believe that for a moment." Before she could respond, he lowered his head and kissed her softly. It was a question more than a demand, gentle and sweet. When he pulled back, Eliza found herself following, unwilling to break the connection. "I'll consider it," she whispered against his lips. "After tomorrow. After justice is done." The courthouse was packed the following morning. Word had spread quickly about the charges, and it seemed everyone in Silver Creek and beyond had come to witness the proceedings. Judge Wilson, Mayor Brooks, and Sheriff Collins had arrived from Silverwood, their faces thunderous with rage when they spotted Eliza. "This is absurd," Judge Wilson blustered when the charges were read. "This woman is nothing but a troublemaker spreading malicious lies." "The evidence suggests otherwise," Judge Harris replied coolly. "These documents bear your signature, Judge Wilson, as well as yours, Mayor Brooks. Forgeries, obviously," the mayor declared. "The word of a servant girl against respected officials, it's preposterous." "And the testimonies of these 15 property owners." Judge Harris gestured to the ranchers and farmers who had come forward. "Are they all lying as well?" As the hearing progressed, the case against the Silverwood officials grew stronger. A clerk from the railroad company, protected by Judge Harris's guarantees, testified to the corrupt arrangement. Document after document confirmed the conspiracy. By midday, Judge Harris had heard enough. "I find sufficient evidence to hold you all for trial on charges of corruption, fraud, and abuse of office. You will be remanded to custody until formal proceedings can begin." The courtroom erupted in cheers. Eliza felt light-headed with relief and disbelief. Gabriel's arm went around her shoulders, steadying her. "You did it," he murmured. "Your truth has brought justice." "We did it," she corrected, leaning into his strength. Outside the courthouse, people gathered around Eliza, offering thanks, congratulations, and in several cases, apologies for not standing with her sooner. "You're welcome to return to Silverwood now," one of the town councilmen told her. "We'll need someone honest to help rebuild trust in the town." Eliza looked at Gabriel, who stood quietly at her side. "Thank you, but I think my future lies elsewhere." Later, as they rode back toward Gabriel's ranch, a comfortable silence settled between them. The land stretched out before them, golden in the late afternoon sun, filled with possibilities. "Have you decided?" Gabriel asked finally. "About staying." Eliza considered the man beside her, his strength, his kindness, his unwavering support of her truth when others had rejected it. In less than a week, he had become more important to her than she could have imagined possible. "I think," she said slowly, "that some treasures are too valuable to walk away from." Gabriel's smile was brighter than the Arizona sun. "Is that a yes?" "It's a beginning," she replied. "I'd like to see where it leads." 3 months later, Eliza stood in the small dress shop attached to Gabriel's ranch house, now their home. Her fingers traced the sign that Samuel had painstakingly painted: Taylor's Fine Sewing and Dressmaking. Already, women from 3 towns had brought her work, drawn by her skill and the story of her courage that had spread throughout the territory. Strong arms encircled her waist from behind as Gabriel rested his chin on her shoulder. "Proud of yourself, Mrs. Keller." The name still sent a thrill through her, new as it was. They had married just 2 weeks earlier, a small ceremony with Samuel and their new friends in attendance. Some had called it rushed, but to Eliza and Gabriel, it had felt like the natural conclusion to a story that began the moment he offered his hand to a banished woman on a dusty road. "I'm proud of us," she corrected, turning in his arms to face him. "Who would have thought that being cast out would lead me straight to where I belong?" Gabriel cupped her face gently. "I knew from the first moment. When you stood there in the dust, chin raised despite everything, speaking your truth without apology." His thumb brushed her cheekbone. "Your truth has always been my treasure, Eliza, from that first day until forever." As his lips met hers, Eliza marveled at how honesty, which had once cost her everything, had ultimately given her more than she had ever dreamed possible. In Gabriel's arms, in the home and life they were building together, she had found not just justice, but love, the greatest truth of all. The territorial trial had ended with convictions for all 3 Silverwood officials. The stolen lands were returned, restitution ordered. Justice had prevailed, but for Eliza and Gabriel, that victory was secondary to the life they were creating together. "What are you thinking about?" Gabriel asked as they walked hand in hand along the creek that bordered their property, the evening sky painted in brilliant shades of orange and purple. "About how sometimes the hardest truths lead to the most beautiful destinations," she replied, squeezing his hand. "And how grateful I am that you saw treasure where others saw only trouble." Gabriel lifted their joined hands, pressing a kiss to her fingers where his mother's ring now rested. "The best treasures are often those others are too blind to see." As the sun set on the wild Arizona landscape, Eliza knew that, while honesty had once made her an outcast, it had ultimately led her home to this land, to this man, to this love that had begun with a simple act of kindness on a desperate day. In a world that often punished truth-tellers, she had found the rarest gift of all, a heart that cherished her honesty above all else. And in the years that followed through the expansion of their ranch, the birth of their children, the growth of her business into one of the most respected in the territory, that truth remained constant. In Gabriel's eyes, in his arms, in the life they built together, Eliza's honest heart was always and forever his most treasured possession.